The Nintendo Switch has an incredible suite of action-adventure games, and in this video, I wanted to break down my final, for the most part, could change up a little bit, but for real, final top 25 best Nintendo Switch action-adventure games. Now, I did do a top 10 list just a bit ago, but I recently revisited a number of games, talked about them in different lists, and I wanted to put together my definitive, for the most part, 2023 update for the top 25 best action-adventure games. I love me some good action-adventure, so we're absolutely going to get into it and get into it the right way this time. But before we get into that, what's good, everyone? OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you are someone new, and click that notification bell to get my Nintendo Switch RPG live streams and best lists first as soon as they drop. Now, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump right into it. And we're starting off with a game that's held together by duct tape and glue, but it just sneaks in, and that is No More Heroes 3. And the reason why this game just sneaks in is because it is so crazy. When I was putting together my list of best action adventure games, and I was like, all right, these games are kind of on the fringe. They're kind of all like, I like them around the same. No More Heroes 3 kept on coming up as, okay, that was memorable. Okay, that boss battle was crazy. Okay, that was wild in terms of just what it did. The story makes almost no sense, and then you kind of have to piece everything together in your head, but the combat in the game is incredibly fun. You've got a lot of cool different moves to do. You've got this huge area to roam. It's just, once again, held together by duct tape and glue. The frame rate isn't always the best in the open world or open areas. There's some issues overall, but I still had fun slicing and dicing and going through doing different wrestling moves and just the insanity of the story. But I really enjoyed the gameplay. The No More Heroes combat has always been fun. So for me, that's why No More Heroes 3 just snuck in at number 25. Number 24, Dark Souls Remastered, and this is more of a action RPG, but it's got adventure elements considering the huge scale of it, and I decided to let it in. But of course, you can see it as an action RPG as well, but Dark Souls Remastered is a phenomenal game. Now, it's not quite as good as its brethren on other systems, but it's still the first real Souls game to hit the Nintendo platform. And what Dark Souls Remastered does really well is, I think, its weight and scale. Like when you play the game and you've got your different weapons and you're really slicing and you're just really getting into the game, it feels good to play and it feels like you really have progress. When you go, you get bodied on a bunch of enemies a bunch of times, or you get slain a bunch of times and you have to go there and collect your souls again. You truly feel that if you went and conquered that boss that you couldn't beat before, that you got better, that you progressed as a player. And as you go through this game and you fight more and more, you start realizing, oh, I'm getting better and better and better at the game. Your reflexes are getting better. Your determination is getting better. And that's what I loved about it. Now, I'm not a huge Souls player anymore, but back when it came out, I was playing it quite a bit and I enjoyed it a lot. So I think it's good enough to make it into my top 25 best list, right in at number 24. Number 23, No Man's Sky. Now, this is an interesting game, procedurally generated, came out super late on the Nintendo Switch, and people were thinking, wait a minute, No Man's Sky? This game is huge. It's got galaxies and all sorts of stuff. What's going on? It's probably not going to run great. But no, when you boot it up and you start playing, it runs really good. It looks good. It plays good. And then you start realizing, wait a minute, this game is only like a few gigabytes or something like that. It's not even that crazy. And then you start seeing exactly what this company did to really turn the whole game around from that disastrous launch on the PlayStation 4. It's almost night and day in terms of the quality of No Man's Sky, to the point to where I feel confident enough in playing this game to where it's one of the best action adventure, space exploration, different types of games that you can do. Heck, there's many things that's better in this game than a game like Starfield, which was made by a way bigger team and had way more of a budget and had way more hype and everything going into it. Although No Man's Sky had a lot of hype, but if you play the game at this point on the Switch, especially on that Switch OLED portable, you're going to think that this is magical, that it's a great and fun experience. I didn't expect to like No Man's Sky as much as I did, but I ended up playing it straight a number of hours and just really enjoying my time with it, with all the different planets you can go to and all the different equipment that you have and different wildlife that you can get and scanning and stuff. It's kind of like a chill game that becomes something even greater than that. You almost feel like if it's like a connected universe of all different types of things and you have no idea what's going to happen. So No Man's Sky makes it to number 23 on my list. Number 22, Immortals Phoenix Rising. Now, this was a little bit of a crusty-ish port on the Nintendo Switch, but that's okay because the action and adventure in this game is quite large. It's good. There is a lot of things with this game. It takes some of the best elements from an Assassin's Creed. It's made by Ubisoft, of course. It takes some of the best elements from Zelda, from other action games, and tries to put it all together. Now, they don't quite stick the landing flawlessly, but I still think it's one of the best action adventure games on the platform, with some light RPG elements and other things kind of thrown into the mix. But for the most part, you're going on this grand adventure with a fantastic and funny story for the most part. Kind of a weird main character, but there's some stuff to like. And overall, I really enjoyed the puzzles. I really enjoyed the combat in the game. I felt that the open world, while not perfect, is still fun to explore. There's a lot of different secrets, a lot of items to get, a lot of different adventure things just to do. And I found myself kind of going back to it quite a bit back when it came out. Now, it's very unfortunate that this game didn't necessarily do well enough sales-wise because Ubisoft did have a sequel planned, but they ended up canning it. So this is my hope for this franchise because I did enjoy it. My hope is that they look at the Nintendo Switch 2, they realize that they probably should have focused on that platform, and then they release Immortals Phoenix Rising 2 on the next-gen Nintendo system, and if it does well enough, then you port it over and you do whatever you want to do with it, but really market it and focus it on one platform and get it as great as it can be, and then just see how it does, because I think that can actually push it to be a game where a lot of people go out there and buy it, and of course you'll reduce your development costs from the start, and if you make a lot of money, then you kind of expand it out. So that's what I'm hoping, because this game is good enough for a sequel. Next up at number 21, Death's Door. And I'll be honest here, guys, I was struggling whether to put this up a bit higher. It truly is a fantastic game. A lot of people really like it, and I like Death's Door a lot myself too, because I think that Death's Door, the controls on the Nintendo Switch are great. As you're playing through, as you're dodging, as you're slashing, as you're upgrading, as you're going through these levels in this isometric view, it gives you like that old school vibe, that old school feel of, okay, here we go. We've got this old school adventure that I'm playing through, and it's very funny too at times. Very funny, very sarcastic, and it has just a great tone to it. As I was playing through the game, I really enjoyed leveling up and fighting characters and dodging. It's one of those type of games that you just pick up and play, and you'll probably play for like 3-4 hours plus and not even know that the time went by, because you're so involved in all of the action and the adventure and the combat and the levels and everything that they have, and some of the weirdest dialogue. It's never too much. It's always really gameplay focused, and that's what I appreciate about this type of action adventure type of game. So Death's Door makes it to number 21 on my list. All right, let's get the next batch of 5, guys. Starting in at number 20, Red Dead Redemption plus Undead Nightmare. This is an open world action adventure game that I really loved back in the day on the Xbox 360. Now, I did play a lot of it on the Nintendo Switch as well. Got my physical copy, booted it up, update, and it runs surprisingly incredible. But I guess it shouldn't be surprisingly, because the Nintendo Switch is more than capable enough of handling an Xbox 360 game. But these open world games are exactly the type of game that has had some problems on the Nintendo Switch, in addition to other big third-party games. But what I liked about Red Dead Redemption is all of the depth that it has. It's not just a Western game you just shoot and that's it. There's a lot of layers to it in terms of what you can do, the quests that are in the game, the different abilities that you have, and just the story in general. One of the best stories ever that I've ever played in a game. I was absolutely shocked by the end of the game, and Undead Nightmare is really fun. It's one of those really cool zombie spin-off expansions. I mean, at the time, zombies were so popular with COD, so I understand why they did it, and it's a nice bonus to get with Red Dead Redemption. So I think that the package is more than worth it, and I think it's good enough to make it to number 20 on my list. Number 19, No More Heroes 2. So we have the second game here, and unfortunately, No More Heroes 1 just missed out, but No More Heroes 2 to me is the best No More Heroes game. I think that this game does so many things better than No More Heroes 3. One, it runs a lot better on the Nintendo Switch. Obviously, it's a ported over, remastered Wii game, so yes, it's not going to be as intensive. But two, they don't waste time on things that are not needed. Now, I get people wanted to drive around with Travis Touchdown in the open-ended areas and stuff, but there was too much which caused issues on the Nintendo Switch. No More Heroes 2 is all about that action. It's all about that adventure. You've got your nice little bonus side quests that you can do, your little mini games that you have to upgrade. You've got a variety of different weapons that you can wield, dual katanas and more, a bunch of huge wrestling moves that you can do, some of the best bosses in the franchise, hands down, is No More Heroes 2, and it's got a nice vibe and tone and graphical look to it. It's sleek. The fact that this game, all the way back from 2009, 2010 or so, to me, still tops as the best No More Heroes game and one of the best action adventure games on the platform. Next up at number 18, The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. So Link's Awakening is a game that I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with, and towards the end of the game, I really started enjoying a lot of the things with Link's Awakening. I'm not the biggest traditional puzzle-based Zelda fan, and there are some issues with the frame rate and things with The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening, but it's super charming and cute. Let's just keep it real right now. It's super charming and cute. It's got some great dungeons and some cool designs in there and fun action. The more different weapons and abilities and different things that you get in the game, it makes it more fun. Plus, they have a whole separate dungeon maker type of mode as well, which people have been wanting. Yes, it's not completely thought out like Mario Maker or anything, but it's still nice in there. The sound effects, the music, the style, everything in this remake of a classic Game Boy game really speaks to me, because I played the Game Boy game back in the day and absolutely hated it. And when I first played this game, I absolutely hated it. But as I kept playing and as I kept going on, I actually started enjoying it so much more. Now, I don't think it's one of the best Zelda games or anything like that, but I still think it's one of the best action adventure games. I feel that it does a lot of stuff correct. It's got a really cool vibe to it. You can kind of just play and chill out and solve some dungeons and some mysteries and kind of have the different scrolling. Feels super old school, and I like that about this game. So it makes it the number 18 on my list. Number 17, back-to-back Zelda. We've got The Legend of Zelda: Skyward Sword HD, and I really enjoy the remaster of this game because it has normal controls. Now, the normal controls are not perfect. Don't kill me in the chat, guys. I know they're not perfect, but I'll honestly rather play it with the normal controls, button controls, than play it with the motion controls, because the motion controls, not that they're bad, they work well enough in the original Wii game, and they're not maybe quite as good on the Switch version, maybe, but the button controls give you options, and it's not only the button controls, but the game runs at 1080p 60 frames per second, so you get a much smoother and better frame rate, and the graphics just look so much better. Skyward Sword was not a bad looking game, especially for the Wii system, but it's crusty looking. It's absolutely crusty looking, and Skyward Sword HD smooths things out, and it actually rebuilds some of the textures to make it look a bit cleaner. Also, fun fact, it's the first console Zelda game to run at 60 frames per second, at least official release from Nintendo. So there's also that. You combine all the other little quality of life features that they've added in to this, you've got a great action adventure game. Not the best Zelda, and we're going to talk more about that franchise in a bit, but it's still, to me, one of the best, and I think a welcomed addition from a game from the Wii era that's just tough to play at this point and needed to be updated, because there's a lot of things that are kind of old with that game. Makes it the number 17 on the list. Number 16, Luigi's Mansion 3, a game that maybe I could have put a bit higher, but I did hold back just a little bit, and let me tell you guys the reason why. I love the game. I think it's fantastic. I think it's got great controls. It's really fun. The graphics are incredible. The sound design's really good. There's a lot of upgrades. It's a dope game. I love the Professor Egad and all the crazy contraptions and the poltergust and all that stuff. That's all really cool. The backtracking and just the elongated story was not quite as great as you're going back through all these different things. They didn't do enough to kind of change it up. Otherwise, if they did, I would have had this game up way higher. Now, the boss battles are cool, but some of them are just frustrating and annoying, but the boss battles are fun in the game. I think that this game has a shocking amount of content, from the single player that took me, I think, about 20 hours or so to beat, then also the local multiplayer that's completely different and separate from the online multiplayer, the little ghost tower thing that you have that you can play with 4 friends, which I've done before. Isn't the most addictive multiplayer, but it's there for you if you want to play it. And the local mini games are actually really fun too if you have family or friends to play with. So Luigi's Mansion 3 brings together a full package that I didn't think Luigi's Mansion would do, considering Luigi's Mansion 2 and 1 don't have anywhere near as much content, and I played both of those. So for all of that, Luigi's Mansion 3 makes it to number 16 on the list. Let's get into number 15, and that is Kirby and the Forgotten Land. A game just like others on this list I think could have been higher. I don't really have too many bad things to say about Kirby and the Forgotten Land. The only problem would be the 30 frames per second. 30 frames per second and some of the difficulty in the game. If it was 60 and there was a hard mode, oh man, this game might be higher up on this list. But that aside, if you look at the different combat, you look at the different levels, you look at the replay value, which it does have some difficulty after you get towards the end of the game and some of the side stuff, there is some difficulty added in. So let me just make sure that I make that clear. There are some hard levels and hard parts and stuff after you beat the game. I just would have liked it a little bit more balanced throughout the adventure. But when it comes to the good things about this, graphically, it looks incredible. The best looking Kirby game by a country mile, and it's not even close. You have great stages, great level design, really cool power-ups. I love the different sword fighter and the different like fire, flamethrower, and the different ice and abilities that you can get, and you can upgrade them and level those up, and it really rewards you for doing everything in the game and getting as many upgrades as you can. I love that about Kirby. I like the overworld map to where you can kind of move and find different secrets. It just has a Super Mario 3D world vibe to it, like Kirby's version of that, and I loved it. I love the boss battles and things that you can get by replaying. Kirby and the Forgotten Land is the best Kirby game. I think it's the best Kirby game of all time, and I think that whatever they do next, they're gonna have their work cut out for them, because this game was really good. So I'm hoping that we get a Kirby and the Forgotten Land 2 on the Nintendo Switch 2 that ups all of this, or we just get a Kirby and the Forgotten World, Kirby and the New World, Kirby and the something, and they build off of this incredible game that was Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Next up at number 14, Ori and the Blind Forest, a game that has made multiple lists. Phenomenally paced gameplay. You've got great action and adventure platform, and it's kind of a mix of so many different things. A touching story, great upgrades, combat, a lot of different stuff just happening dynamically on screen. I've talked about this game so much, sometimes I'm like, what else can I say about it that people haven't heard? But if you're someone new watching, or if you're looking at this list in terms of what you want to play, Ori and the Blind Forest is a great game. It's made by Moon Studios. That's Microsoft in terms of the original release for this game, and they brought it over, and it runs great. Some people were thinking, oh, there might be some problems with the frame rate or something. Nope, runs great, looks great, has big action, big adventure. Ori and the Blind Forest is one of those games that's going to touch you emotionally. You're going to feel it afterwards when you get done playing this game, and you're going to remember so many different things about the experience. Me personally, I love the combat in the game. I think that the combat and the adventure and the platform, in which this game could be a platforming game, it's a Metroidvania style. There's so much stuff with this game. It's hard to kind of nail it down to one type of class or two types of classes, but Ori and the Blind Forest is absolutely one of the best action adventure games on the platform, and it's something that everybody should check out and play. Number 13, Hades. Oh, this is tough too as well, right, guys? Like, some people are saying, wait a minute, that's a rogue game, or wait a minute, that's just an action game, but it's really a mix of so many different things. It's a mix of action, it's a mix of adventure, it's a mix of course, the rogue game. It's a mix of so many different things. Got some light RPG elements here and there. So to me, Hades, anytime that I can put it in and talk about it, I'm going to talk about it, because I think that there is a lot of cool action stuff with it in terms of the different rooms and the different areas you go to, different types of powers and abilities, how the story lays out, how you do certain things and where you go. It just becomes something that turns into its own adventure in its own right that you replay over and over and over again. And I get frustrated over and over and over again. But if you have not played Hades, this is the time to pick it up. Hades 2 is coming out next year as of the time that I'm recording this video. Really highly anticipated game. I'm really looking forward to it. This is the perfect time to get into Hades. Adventure, action, combat, fun, great story, great graphics, great style, great dialogue, great voice acting. There's not much wrong that I can say about it outside of me being frustrated when I get clapped in the game. Hades, number 13 on the list. Number 12, Ori and the Will of the Wisp. And the funny thing about Hades and the Ori games and other like indie games, they probably have shuffled so many times on my list, because sometimes I can't even like pick between them. Sometimes I feel like this is better than this is better, but Ori and the Will of the Wisp takes everything that I talked that was great about Ori and the Blind Forest and just like magnifies it. It makes it even better. It's got a better story. It's got better combat. It's got better adventure. It's got better upgrades. It's got better level design. The graphics are tweaked up just a bit. Looks similar, obviously it's a sequel, but the graphics are tweaked up. And the best part about it is that it runs phenomenal on the Nintendo Switch. And there is a physical double pack as well. What more could you ask for? These are super highly rated games. Ori and the Will of the Wisp is one of the great action adventure games that just does so many things right with its level design. You're going to feel like it's like the ultimate mix of like your favorite Metroid or some of the Metroid games or Mega Man and all these different titles, melee combat games, and they put it all together in a certain way that's just adorable with the character, but also once again kind of hits you right in the feels when you start getting through the game. I highly recommend the game, and I feel that it's one of the best, easily making it to number 12 on my list. Number 11, Monster Hunter Rise. And very similar to what I've talked about before, this game kind of encompasses a lot of genres. It's an action RPG, it's an action game, it's an adventure game, it's kind of everything. So I have to put it in here because the adventure in this game is huge, especially with the single player stuff. Monster Hunter Rise, Sunbreak, you feel by the time that you play everything, you feel like you're going on this grand adventure. Even though it's a game where it's like multiplayer focused, you go out, you hunt these huge monsters, it's in these segmented areas, you fight them, then you come back. So it has a lot of multiplayer built into it and not quite an adventure like other games. But when you really put everything together, when you play through the single player campaign and when you play through it, they blend that seamlessly into the style of what Monster Hunter is. And it is a phenomenal experience. I personally loved a lot of the new weapons and the traversal options. That's what makes this game so much fun to go through. You have a Palamute, a dog to run through. You've got this little wire bug that you can use to zip around the stages. You've got crazy cool bosses that you can fight, monsters that you can fight all over the place, a lot of upgrading and adventures that you can go on with your friends. So like I said, it's a bit of everything. Sorry if you don't feel it's quite action adventure and it's more something else, but to me, I had to include it on this list anytime that I can when it comes to Monster Hunter Rise. It's that good. Before we get into our top 10, I do want to add in a little honorable mention here that could have easily been rated within the top 25 to 15 or so, and that is Darksiders War Mastered Edition. I forgot to add it in, but this game is absolutely incredible. It's one of the best action adventure games on the platform. If you like The Legend of Zelda and you like maybe Bayonetta or Devil May Cry, games like that, it tries to mix it together but then put its own style on it. It's got a great story, the graphics are good, it's an Xbox 360 game remastered and put on the Nintendo Switch, but it runs really well, looks good, has a bunch of cool abilities and powers and some cool backtracking, replay value. It's a fantastic package altogether on the Nintendo Switch. So I want to make sure that I added that in there because Darksiders War Mastered Edition is absolutely one of the best action adventure games on the platform. Let's jump into the top 10 at number 10, and that is Okami HD, a game that I recently talked about on my best Nintendo Switch third-party games. And this is a game that I went back to a little bit to kind of remember exactly how good this game was. I played it back on the PS2, I played it on the Wii, I played it on the PS3, but it really wasn't until the Switch that I truly went in, and played through and found as many secrets as I can, and I saw the brilliance and the genius of Clover Studios with Hideki Kamiya. Okami is a beautiful expression that clearly shows that video games are transcendent when it comes to a form of art. There's nothing like video games, and Okami is one of those games that you can point to and say, this is the game that proves it. This is the game that shows that type of art, because it's got these beautiful like watercolor, water paint graphics done in high definition, but then it's also got this really in-depth combat system with fantastic traditional Japanese music style and flair. It really just all hits and it vibes, and when it hits you, man, it hits you, and it's fun. It's just flat out fun. That's what makes an action adventure game great. Huge area. It's actually a lot bigger when it comes to the areas and the locations than I thought it was when I originally played the game, so it's big on that. And there's a reason why Okami originally on the PS2 won a lot of Game of the Years back before we had the Keeley Awards, just Publications Game of the Years, or it was a runner-up, just because it's that good. Okami HD makes it in at number 10 on my list. Number 9, Bayonetta, the original. And Bayonetta, for the longest time for me, was my favorite action game of all time. Obviously, it's got some great adventure elements. There's some really cool things that Bayonetta does, some really cool levels that change up and mix it up. But it still has, to me, some of the most innovative mechanics that still to this day are being used. I think that stuff like dodge offset, being able to hold down the button, do a dodge, and do different types of combos, then pick it right back up for bonuses. The controls, that's what makes Bayonetta so good. That's what makes Bayonetta awesome. The controls are pinpoint. The controls are super accurate. As soon as you press that button, it happens on screen. And when you play through the game, you'll realize that you'll get better and better and better with Bayonetta's combos as you upgrade, as you go through the different levels, as you do crazy platforming and go on super adventures with Bayonetta and some of her friends. I love this game. I still love this game, and even though it's over a decade plus old, it's still easily, to me, one of the best action adventure games. Next up at number 8, speaking of that witch, Bayonetta, she's back at number 8 with Bayonetta 3. And people talk about Bayonetta 3. Some people say it's the worst mainline Bayonetta game, but I don't necessarily think so. I think Bayonetta 3 is right there potentially in the middle. We'll talk about another game soon, but Bayonetta 3 is incredible. Yes, frame rate stuff, I got that, I understand it, but the ambition in terms of what they wanted to do with this game is unlike any other scale of any other action adventure game on the platform. The fact in this game, at any point, you can call huge, like skyscraper sized demon slaves to fight in real time, not a cutscene, not something like a quick time event, but in real time is absolutely incredible. And you can switch on the fly, you can combo it up, you can do combos with yourself and then shoot right over to that in Demon Slave and dance around and do different moves and combos, then go back and forth. It's something that was super ambitious, maybe a bit too ambitious for the Nintendo Switch, but they were able to get it done. And the results, while mixed with some of the frame rate, once you start playing, the input delay or latency is snaps. It's right there. So it's not like it's going to be laggy or you're going to feel like it's sluggish with the inputs and your button presses. I love the bosses in the game. Those were super fun to go through. The different weapons and abilities might be the best in the series history. There's some really cool stuff in the game, some really cool throwbacks, and the ending is absolutely kind of baffling. I'm shocked, but also gives you hope for what they could go for in the future. So I love that about Bayonetta 3. Seeing multiple different Bayonettas and the types of different abilities that they have was super cool. Bayonetta 3 makes it to number 8 on my list. Number 7, Hollow Knight. Incredible action, adventure, platformer, mixed type of game. I don't know, you guys might yell at me for this one here too, but Hollow Knight is pretty much perfect. There's really nothing wrong with this game. I'm not a huge fan of some things like the map system in the game, but I get it. That was intentional when it comes down to it. And I feel that Hollow Knight has everything that you need to be a successful action adventure 2D platformer type of game. It's got phenomenal controls. It's got pinpoint controls. We're talking about Bayo games and those being pinpoint. Well, this one's super pinpoint. You've got great bosses, very difficult as well. Hollow Knight is a game that will make you think about it even when you're not playing it. And I loved all the different abilities and different stuff that you can do, but really it's all based on your own skill. It's all based on your own skill. And it's all based on you just going through in the game, doing some really cool platforming. But at the end of the day, it's just this huge 2D adventure indie game that nobody really saw coming, like not at the beginning, but ultimately ended up just being way better than a lot of people thought. And I love this game. Still waiting for Silksong. You guys know we gotta say Silksong. If you bring up Hollow Knight, you gotta say Silksong. So we're still waiting for that. But until then, if you have not played Hollow Knight, or even if you've played it, go back and check it out. I think you're going to agree with me that it's easily a top 10 action adventure game on the platform. Number 6, Metroid Prime Remastered. Now, this might be higher if I didn't get motion sickness every single time that I played it. First person action adventure game. It is phenomenal. It is so good on the Nintendo Switch that I think that Nintendo holding it as long as they did, because apparently it was in development and finished a long time ago, is a little bit of a travesty. But now that people have gotten to play it, now that I've gotten to play it more and go through with it with normal controls, with a controller that I love, with the Nintendo Switch Pro controller, it feels great to play. But it also adds some of the other stuff that was cool to play from Metroid Prime 2, Metroid Prime 3, or even the Metroid Prime trilogy that had like the pointer controls. It adds that as well. The game graphically, yes, it is Metroid Prime. They take that game and they bring it over when it comes to the game, so it looks like that, but a lot of stuff looks way better than how it looked on the GameCube, and that is the superior art design in this game. That is the superior look and feel. Retro just was able to take what Metroid was and turn it into this huge, sprawling adventure shooter action game that is so much fun to play through. Now, the wire maps in the game aren't fun to play through with those. Some people like them, but I do not like them. But I love the design. I love the design. I love the bosses. I think that's a lot of fun too. I think that the Switch version eliminates a lot of those long door loading times that were just really annoying for me back when I played it on the GameCube and on the Wii. So that is all done and that's wrapped up. And they remastered it to a perfection. Smooth controls, whether you want to do the old school GameCube or do the new school pointer controls. The upgrades, the different suits that you can get with Samus, the different levels and areas that you go to, all the backtracking. It's just awesome. It's awesome. Not for everybody, but it's absolutely incredible. So that's why Metroid Prime Remastered makes it the number 6 on my list. At number 5, Bayonetta 2. One of the greatest action adventure games of all time. One of the greatest action games of all time. This to me is what solidified Bayonetta as here to stay. The quality of this franchise is apparent here. Bayonetta 2 takes everything that Bayonetta 1 did and says, okay, we're going to make it even better. It actually runs better on the Nintendo Switch than the original release from the Wii U. It's got a bunch of cool extras and secrets and stuff that Nintendo added in for fans of Nintendo, and of course for Platinum Games just adding that stuff in. It's got fantastic controls and combat options and upgrades. All of those things in the game really just make it what it is. Bayonetta 2 is one of those games that you start playing and it feels like butter. Silky smooth, super fun to play, lots of different enemies to go through, and it provides that challenge that you want from a great action adventure game. You're going to be constantly, if you want it to be, you can put it on the easy, but if you want it to be, you can get that challenge and really understand your combos and your moveset and your different abilities, having the weapons on your hands or your feet, being able to mix and match. Going through is so much fun, but I think that the boss battles is really where they outdid themselves. Every boss in this game, or even some of the sub bosses in this game, feel dangerous and deadly, but at the same time, you feel like you could rip them apart to shreds when you're on your best game. It's got so much great side content and so many different things that it's dynamic. I mean, even there's a multiplayer mode that you can play with a friend and transfer halos back to the single player. It feels like they really thought about everything and made the perfect version of Bayonetta, and I'm really hoping that for Bayonetta 4 on the next Nintendo Switch that they go back, take the base of Bayonetta 2, make the graphics better, make the gameplay even better somehow, make the weapons, evolve it from there, take that base and go forward with it. As much as I love Bayonetta 3, Bayonetta 2 to me should be the base going forward for Bayonetta 4, and then just kind of build on top of that. So I hope that they do that. Bayonetta 2 is still the best rated Bayonetta game of all time as well. Next up at number 4, Metroid Dread, a game that I will find any excuse to talk about. My favorite 2D Metroid game of all time. My favorite Metroid game of all time is Dread. This is the quintessential action adventure game when it comes to Metroid. It just is. I love the Emmys. The Emmys were so cool, but also terrifying, being able to get away from them, running through the different Emmy zones. That was great. But what really makes Metroid Dread shine is the abilities, is the controls, and is the gameplay. All of that, you put them together and you combine that with fantastic art direction and great bosses. It's a game that you can replay over and over and over and over again. And each time that you replay it and you get better or faster, or you do the boss rush mode, you're like, man, this game is really good. It grows on you. It really does. So I highly recommend for anybody that's saying, oh, Metroid Dread, it's not as good as Fusion or it's not as good as some of these other games, go back and play it again. Go back and play it again with your Nintendo Switch Pro controller. Don't use your Joy-Cons. Don't use some other controller that you're not good with. Use your favorite when it comes down to it and play the game. Play it through, do the boss rush, do the harder difficulties, and see what you have to do to adapt to this game. And I'm telling you, it really is that good. It's the best Metroid game of all time, in my opinion, and that's why it is number 4 on the list. Number 3, Astral Chain, and goodness gracious, I know guys, I'm sorry, action RPG, action adventure, action this, what is this game? But it has a mix of so many different things, and once again, just like Metroid, just like Bayonetta, just like many of these games, I've got to find ways to talk about them. So we're going to talk about Astral Chain here. To me, one of Platinum Games' best title, if not their best title. Astral Chain does so many things cool and new as a new IP for Nintendo Platinum Games. I love the Legions. The Legions are what make this game go. The art style, incredible. Love the Ghost in a Shell, slick, futuristic Tokyo type of look. That is incredible. That adds to the scale of the game. That adds to the style and the flavor of the game. But when you put the Legions in there with everything else, it just looks like the person who drew this, the person who did this, was an absolute genius and madman to make this work with the technical programmers and everything to make it work well on the Switch system. I love the upgrading. I love the different abilities. I love the levels. There's crazy stuff that you're happening, riding on the motorcycle the first level. There's so many iconic moments in this game, but then there's also detective stuff in this game, like Batman or something like that. You're going through, you're analyzing the crime scenes, you're answering questions, you're doing different things. So it has that adventure part kind of put into it, and the levels are big enough to where you can free roam in some areas and all that. Kind of gives you like a little mini GTA at times, although you can't do stuff that you do in GTA. But you guys know what I'm talking about if you've played the game. So I loved Astral Chain. I think that it's one of the best action adventure RPG thingies, whatever you want to classify it as, and it absolutely deserves its number 3 spot on the list. We are down to the top 2, and number 2 is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Is one of the most monumental games of all time. It took what we know about Zelda in our dreams when we said, hey, we would love Zelda to do this, and it pretty much executed on so much of that. Yes, the story might be lacking a little bit. Some people don't like the memories and certain stuff, and I completely get that. But when you look at what Link can do in this game, the rock climbing, the wall climbing, the anywhere that you see, you can pretty much go. The abilities, the Sheikah Slate, the different types of things that they did in this game, pulling from inspirations from other games, but also giving their own take on it. I think that Breath of the Wild, the intrigue, the mystery, the scale, all the different areas that you can go to, the shrines, even though a lot of them aren't good and all that, it was still cool to explore. You felt like the world was your canvas and you can do what you want. The combat options were incredible. Different abilities and different things that Link could do were just out of this world. You never played it in a Zelda game before. It became the best adventure game, the adventure game that everybody else kind of looked at and said, okay, we need to maybe do something like that, because there's been multiple other games that have copied Breath of the Wild's action adventure formula. So I think that's why Breath of the Wild was so great. I mean, I love the music, although there was just sometimes no music or just nature sounds and things like that, but when the music did hit, it was great. It was fantastic. And a lot of the enemies that you encountered was so fun to fight against, like the first time, like the Lionels and the different colors of them and everything. So for me, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is the second best action adventure game on the platform. And at number 1, you guys guessed it, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. It builds off of the base from what Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is. There are some people that don't feel too highly about some of the story elements, but I still feel that the story in this game is better than what we got with Breath of the Wild. There were more cinematic cutscenes and more talking about certain stuff and certain things that was just great that I don't want to spoil because the game is not that old, but I loved it. I loved what they did. I loved the style of it and the gameplay. The best open world gameplay that I have ever played, in my opinion. The biggest amount of options, the creativity that you can do outside of something like Minecraft or some of these games where you can just like create whatever. In a structured action adventure game, there's not many other games that can say that they can do what The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom can do, to where you see a puzzle and you would have maybe 50 people all solve it in a different type of way because of what you can do with the Zonai arm and your fuse abilities and your ultra hand abilities and just being able to solve things in the way that you want and to go about it. And the fact that you can actually have different types of vehicles that you can fuse together and make yourself, you can get super creative and you can literally spend hours upon hours just creating different things and fighting enemies in the way that you want. I think that Tears of the Kingdom brings so much flexibility to the combat system that wasn't there in Breath of the Wild. Some people think that it's just a small upgrade. I don't think so when it comes to what you can do in this game. It's a huge upgrade, especially when you start putting in all of the other abilities like Fuse and like Ascend and certain things like that. You can do some crazy combinations that wasn't even possible, not even close, when it comes to Breath of the Wild. That almost makes it look like a tech demo at times in terms of what they ultimately wanted to do in the game. So for me, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is the best action adventure game on the Nintendo Switch on a system that has a marquee lineup of action adventure games. But now it's your time to tell me, what are your favorite action adventure games on the platform? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button. Subscribe if you're someone new. Click that notification bell and check out my other top 25 best Nintendo Switch lists, like my top 25 best Nintendo Switch first-party games and more. Thank you for watching. We'll catch you for the next one. Peace.